Welcome back. Today we're joined by Scott Ritter, a former UN weapons inspector, a US Marine Corps intelligence officer, and an author to discuss the US and Israeli attack on Iran and what appears to be a very extensive retaliation by Iran. So you've been watching this over the past few hours since the attack began. What do you make of this attack?
Well, I mean, this is a very concerted effort to remove the regime from power. Both Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu declared the goal and objective of this campaign to be regime change, and they made the effort. I mean, they struck the residence of Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader. They tried to kill the president of Iran. They've struck the residences and places of business of many of Iran's senior leadership, military and civilian. There are some casualties. Apparently, the president and the supreme leader aren't among the casualties, but this was a decapitation effort that is ongoing as we speak. And the Iranians promised that if this war comes in, that their response will be different than it was during the 12-day war, and we're seeing that, a broader range of target sets, et cetera. We're very early into this process, so it's impossible to predict outcomes, except to say this: we didn't kill them. If the goal is regime change and you don't kill the regime, you failed. And I think that this failure will, unless it's immediately reversed, will be the beginning of a cascading sequence of events that are linked to this original failure. What I mean by this is, and I think you and I discussed this the last time we talked, that this war is a war that is going to be defined by the availability of munitions on the part of the United States. When the United States runs out of ammunition, it runs out of the ability to project power in a meaningful fashion. We knew, based upon the warnings of American generals and admirals, that the military believed there was insufficient resources to carry out this task, that they weren't going to be able to succeed. And I think their worst nightmares are coming true, because in military operations especially, it's a resource-intensive war. What happens is you have targets that need to be struck, and you have resources that will then be brought in to strike those targets. The goal is to take out a certain target deck, and then you take these resources and you reallocate them to other missions, follow-on missions. We saw this during the Desert Storm. The United States had two F-15E Strike Eagle squadrons. These were, at that time, very valuable resources because of their ability to penetrate deeply and strike with precision. And they were allocated in the opening phases of the conflict to take out Iraq's ballistic missile launch capability. And then they were supposed to be reallocated to the air campaign in Basra and in Baghdad. And the plan was based upon these resources being available at a given time to have an impact on the Iraqi target deck here. Here we have an Iranian combat campaign, and it's predicated upon the utilization of a certain amount of resources to achieve decapitation and security suppression. Before you move on to the next phase of targets, you reallocate these resources. They failed, which means now that resources that should be being reallocated have to remain on the target deck and been reinforced by resources being diverted from other missions. And so now you start to see a disruption in the campaign. Now, normally you can ride this one out. You can then say, okay, we're going to suppress, and move on. But each one of these is utilizing ammunition, of which there's a finite quantity. So when you start a campaign on the notion that we don't have enough ammunition to see this thing through, that we have to win quickly, and right from the start, you see the campaign fall apart. No plan survives initial contact with the enemy. Well, this is true today. Regime change did not work. If regime change is required to achieve um, the necessary conditions to have people rise up, et cetera, you have to stay on that target deck, which means that the munitions that you used initially didn't achieve the job. They're gone. They can't be replaced. You now have to take munitions from other target decks, bring them in with the resources, and continue to strike. So you're chewing up even more ammunition, taking it away from these other target decks, and you have a cascading sequence of failures that will lead to the depletion of munitions without any of the objectives being achieved. That is the definition of defeat. And so, again, it's very early, but I would say that the indications are that the United States has already lost this war.
Well, what do you make of the I guess a lack of escalation control? Because in all the wars we've seen over the past at least 30 plus years, there's been an efforts to have complete control over the escalation. But this time, what degree of escalation, which actors should be involved, when the war should come to an end, what's acceptable targets, all of this seems to be not under control. I see reports of strikes, of Iranian retaliatory strikes on Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Jordan. There's been some reports of explosions in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. Essentially, all regional targets of where the U.S. bases are being hit. And of course, there's also been strikes in Tel Aviv, Haifa, in Israel. Uh, what do you think the thinking is now in Iran? Because they're, well, certainly not holding back and pursuing some traditional, escalation ladder here.
Well, what is the thinking of Tehran? They just absorbed a decapitation strike that was designed to kill their senior leadership for the purpose of achieving a collapse of the government, a collapse of a system that has been in place for 47 years. So, right off the bat, the question is, what do they have to lose? I mean, if they're coming at you to kill you, do you respond with escalation ladder? Or do you say, we are engaged in an existential struggle for survival? The job of the Iranians is to finish this conflict with the Islamic Republic intact. But much as we've seen in the case with Russia and Ukraine, Vladimir Putin has articulated not just the need to bring an end to the war, but to bring an end to the war in a way that addresses the root causes of the conflict so that we don't see a resumption of the conflict break out 5-10 years from now. The United States and Israel have just said we're in the business of destroying the Iranian regime. The purpose of this campaign is to eliminate Iran. So for the Iranians to emerge from this war alive, but with Israel and the United States still maintaining a regime change posture, doesn't solve anything. So what are the Iranians up to? A, they're in a battle of existential survival. B, they have to win this war. And the victory in this war is regime change. Now, the United States has always talked about regime change, meaning that it's not just about removing the regime, but changing the behavior of the regime. One way to change the behavior of the current administration is to guarantee its political demise. Donald Trump, I believe, has committed political suicide here. It's the end of the Trump presidency, this decision to bomb Iran. If he doesn't win quickly and decisively, it's over. He will be routed in the midterm elections and be impeached, probably convicted, and that's the end of him. So there's regime change right there. Benjamin Netanyahu, likewise, if you don't get regime change and Iran retaliates and does significant damage to Israel, it's the end of Benjamin Netanyahu's government, his viability as a leader. Then the question is what replaces them. And if you, by striking regional leaders who have been acquiescent to the Israeli and American vision of the Abrams Accords and the diminishment of Iranian power, what you may see is Gulf Arab nations realizing that the United States isn't there, and Israel is a nation that can be defeated. And you'll see a change in the attitude of the of the regime, because it's of the various Gulf Arab nations. It's very important for Iran that when this war ends, this isn't just what happened at the end of the 12-day war. You brought an end to the fighting, but the mindset still was in place to achieve regime change, and that's what we see today. When this war ends, Iran must not only survive, but must have created a geopolitical transformation in the region away from sustaining U.S. and Israeli regime change plans against Iran. And so this is going to require the defeat of the United States military. And the U.S. military is defeated not by sinking ships and shooting down airplanes, but by not winning. It's the same thing about Hezbollah against Israel in 2006. When Israel came out and said our goal in 2006 in the short August war is to destroy Hezbollah completely. And at the end of the war, Hezbollah is still there, raining death and destruction down on Israel. Hezbollah wins. If the United States has said the goal is regime change, when this war ends and Iran is there, Trump will have lost. And this will be devastating for a man who, speaks of peace through strength. You're not very strong when you lose. It'll be devastating for a man who renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War than to go out and lose a war. But this is what Iran needs to do. Iran needs to win this war. They need to physically destroy Israel, and they need to outlast the United States. And again, the conditions of victory are very easy here. You just have to absorb all the ammunition the United States can fire at you, because there is nothing more. That's what the general said. When we run out, we run out. And so I think that's their goal here it's not going to be over soon. This is going to be a drawn out affair. Iran is ready for this. They are prepared for this, and they have a plan. And we are, no plan survives initial contact with the enemy. Well, the American plan is already disruptive because they didn't get regime change. And I think there's a lot of people surprised by the scope and scale of the Iranian retaliation, that they didn't go through an escalation ladder. And that also has consequences, because now there will be political fallout from that. These Gulf Arab rulers, they govern on a slim thread of viability. The populations have to believe that these rulers will bring them, wealth and high standards of living. If your cities are suddenly blowing up, and you were told all along that this will never happen because the United States will defend us, but now the United States can't defend you, suddenly these rulers look weak and ineffective, and who knows what will happen. But this is the Iranian game right now. I think they're flipping the script. This is a geopolitical equivalent of a wrestling reversal. And the regime change strategy may now be that it's not that the United States and Israel are going to succeed in removing the Iranian regime, but that Iran will succeed in removing the Israeli regime, the American regime, and maybe many of the Gulf Arab states.